One of the major things that you're going to need to understand in Conquest are the jungle camps. In this video, I'm going to be explaining the basics of all of the different jungle camps in the game except for the Gold Fury, Pyromancer, and Fire Giant because they're way more complicated. Now, jungle camps are a great source of both experience and gold, but in Conquest specifically, there are a lot of things to keep in mind, so let's break this down in a quick-fire, kind of rapid-paced way. There are 3 types of jungle camps in Smite: buff camps, experience camps, and jungle bosses. Starting with experience camps, these camps take the form of harpies. All harpies in this game are set to be aggressive camps, which means no matter what, if you set foot within their domain, they are going to come at you swinging. There are 3 harpy camps to note. There's mid harpies, located to the left and right of mid lane, which are on a 1.5 minute cooldown. The back harpies are on a 1 minute cooldown, and then there's this alpha harpy, which is on a 2 minute cooldown. The alpha harpy has a unique ability. Occasionally, the alpha harpy is going to scream in your face, which lowers your attack speed on whoever the alpha is attacking. Now, simply put, based off the name, experience camps give just experience and gold. There is no buff associated to them. It's just an experience and gold boon. Now we have to move on to the buff camps. There are 4 different buffs to talk about for Smite. Every single one has its own different aggression set and ability attached to it. Now, on all jungle camps, there's a couple of important things. The buff camp cooldowns are all 2 minutes long. This cooldown is only going to begin when every enemy within the camp is defeated. That includes the small ones on things like red buff, but you'll see in a second. Now, when the buff wearing enemy, which is the big guy, is defeated, that buff is going to drop on the floor and gets to be picked up by an ally. When this buff hits the floor, your team has 30 seconds to pick up this buff before it fades into the ether. And then finally, only 1 buff per god. You can't stack all of them. Now that we know the general stuff that applies to every buff camp, let's get into the specifics. Red buff. This buff is aggressive just like the harpies were. The largest of these manticores with the red buff are going to go berserk when the camp's health points hits 50%. This berserk phase increases the manticore's attack speed, causing you to take more damage. The best way to deal with this ability is to use your own abilities when this threshold is met to avoid taking too much damage from the berserk phase. Once this camp has been defeated, a red orb is going to drop on the ground. The wearer of this buff is going to have increased power for 2 minutes. This buff is worn by the mid laner. Purple buff. This buff is also aggressive like the harpies were. This camp enjoys spitting on its target. This special spit is going to lower your protections by 20% and makes you a non-threat to minions for 30 seconds, even if you're hitting enemy gods. Now, after this camp's defeat, a purple orb is going to drop and the wearer of this buff gains attack speed. This buff is worn by the ADC. Speed buff. Now, note, please don't call it yellow buff, that's not its name. The speed buff is a defensive buff and only attacks after you hit them first. So you can stand and take a selfie with this centaur and it's not going to attack you until you punch it in the face. The lead centaur here has a knife and it's a stabby boy. And he's going to wind up large stabs that obviously are going to hurt, but they can also be easily dodged. After this camp's defeat, a yellow orb is going to drop. The wearer of this buff gains movement speed, and this buff is worn by the jungler. Blue buff. This buff is also set to be passive. This camp only has 1 large boyo, and it's a real party animal. On occasion, this camp is going to summon friends to fight alongside them. The spirits disappear automatically when the main enemy dies, or you can kill off the spirit enemies with abilities or auto attacks because they do have very little health. When this buff falls, a blue orb will drop. This wearer is going to gain 10% cooldown reduction and gain additional mana sustain. This buff is worn by the solo laner. Now we go into the super special bonus stage, where we have a couple of things that don't really fit into the other categories, but I still need to talk about them. Totem of Ku. This is a solo lane objective that the solo laners and sometimes the junglers fight over. Upon one team reaching a damage threshold on this totem, it's going to reward all allies on that successful team with 25 gold, and it's going to buff all allied structures. This buff provides teammates with mana sustain and movement speed while under friendly towers, and it's going to persist for 10 seconds after leaving the tower radius. And then finally we have oracles. These are 2 defensive fury creatures that stand in the gold fury pit. They reward experience and gold. If a single team can kill both furies, then a free invincible ward is going to be placed in the gold fury pit that is going to give free vision to that team. The oracles themselves have a 3-minute cooldown. That's the basics of the jungle. I have separate videos coming on both the Gold Fury, Pyromancer, and Fire Giant, because they're a little bit more complicated. But from there, we're also going to be covering all of the basics of the Conquest game mode in order for you to get a better understanding on what the hell to do. Now, if you want to keep learning Smite with me right now, click the video on your screen. Otherwise, have yourselves a casual day, and I'll see you in the next video.